This book sold suits, books, and even entire houses. It was the Sears and Roebuck catalog, and when it landed on black families' porches, it turned something that used to be a ritual of humiliation into something closer to dignity. So join us today for the untold story of how a simple catalog accidentally fought Jim Crow. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this is One Mic Black History. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. But without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into the Sears catalog, it's important to understand what Jim Crow looked like at the store counter. Before the Pleasant versus Ferguson stamp separate but equal into law in 1896, segregation was enforced not just by statutes but by custom. In rural towns, the country store was the gatekeeper of life. Most black families were tenant farmers or sharecroppers, and credit ran through white merchants who set the prices, kept the books, and controlled interest in the crop lien system, which was a line of credit that allowed sharecroppers to obtain supplies and loans that kept our people in debt. At the store counter, humiliation was policy. You could be made to wait while every white customer was held first. You could be denied formal titles like Mr. and Miss, barred from trying on clothes, steered towards inferior goods, or told that an item was good enough for a nigga. Even the shelves joined in with caricatures on packages and ads that turned racism into branding. Pushing back meant real risk of eviction, arrest, and maybe much worse. This led black communities to answer with a strategy. They opened co-ops and credit unions, patronized black-owned stores. In the 1930s, they started Don't Buy Where You Can't Work campaigns. Long before lunch counter sit-ins, people were already attempting to fight Jim Crow at the cash register. And this is when something different arrived that didn't require a lunch counter at all. It simply required a mailing address. The mail order catalog began with Montgomery Ward in 1872, but the Sears and Roebuck Company turbocharged it in the 1890s. Richard Sears started with watches, and he teamed up with Alvin Roebuck. And by 1894, Sears' Book of Bargains became a thick, illustrated general catalog. Under Julius Renraw's leadership in the 1900s, Sears scaled into a national powerhouse, mailing out millions of catalogs a year and standardizing the satisfaction guaranteed pricing. Everything from farm tools to clothing to stoves and even housing kits. The catalog wasn't just a book, it was a national store delivered to your kitchen table. So, for black customers living under Jim Crow, this was huge. The Sears catalog turned everyday shopping, which could be a site of humiliation and exclusion, into a private transaction. And this change was offset by two things. First, anonymity and dignity. You browsed at home, mailed an order, paid a national price. There was no clerk sizing you up, no side doors, no special totals at the register. In towns where black customers couldn't even try on clothing or were forced to wait for white patrons, that broke daily rituals of disrespect. Secondly, national standardized pricing was a new way to pay. Catalogs were national and printed in ink and not negotiated at a hostile store counter. Sears accepted postal money orders and later offered installment plans on big purchases. These workarounds circumvented banks or merchants that denied fair credit or charged punishing crop lien terms. Additionally, two postal tools were also critical: rural free delivery, which started in 1896, and the parcel post, which started in 1913. The RFD and the postal post switched remote farms into a national logistic network. Backed by federal law, your order traveled by mail, not at a storekeeper's leisure. Interfering with its delivery risked federal penalties, which blunted local officials' ability to block and intimidate customers. Money orders and cash on delivery meant that you could pay a federal carrier, not a hostile shopkeeper or banker. And the post office was a federal space. Postal rules mandated equal service, and interfering with the mail was a federal offense. In places where customs outweighed rights, that blue and gray uniform offered a rare protection. Safety sat in that catalog too. Sears listed rifles alongside farm gear at a time where local laws often failed to protect black communities. Ida B. Wells famously wrote that a Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every black home. Ordering by mail meant lawful self-defense without the hostility of the white gaze. Additionally, while Montgomery Ward insisted on cash, Sears leaned into installment plans for big ticket items and won national price. That combination undercut the company's stores, where merchants controlled goods and credit by buying a stove or a plow at a national price and paying for it over time to a firm hundreds of miles away. It loosened the grip that the gatekeepers had over your life. So, by the time of the first wave of the Great Migration happened in the early 1920s, millions of black Southerners were already completely literate in the language of catalogs, sizes, model numbers, and prices that matched between Mississippi and Chicago. By the 1910s, you could order seeds, a sonograph, or a radio. By the 1920s, telephone lines and order desks sped up things even further, and each layer widened the gap between a local store that could dictate and determine what you can purchase. But this quiet revolution by mail completely threatened the Jim Crow order of things. So the local white gatekeepers moved to shut it down completely. Newspapers reported on catalog burnings. In some towns, the store owner was the postmaster. If you were black, that meant refusals to sell money orders or even stamps. Sears would study the choke points and they would attempt to work around them. Fine print in the catalog told customers how they could hand orders directly to the rural postal carrier, bypassing unhelpful postmasters. Copywriters promised to fulfill orders even if the handwriting was shaky or a note wasn't on the official form. So a smear campaign followed. As mail order shopping cut into that local control, opponents spread racist rumors that Sears and Montgomery Ward were owned by black people to scare off white customers. The companies would push back, printing photos of their founders, offering rewards to anyone who could trace back the lies. But facts mattered very little in the Jim Crow economy, where intimidation and retaliation was common. After the parcel post made shipping cheaper and more reliable, this combination of national pricing, federal delivery, and written guarantees further narrowed the room for petty local monopolies. However, even as Sears' mail order catalog helped black families shop from home, the company struggled with fairness inside its own workforce. In the late 1970s and early 80s, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission brought cases of alleged racial bias on Sears' hiring practices. Sears settled several cases, agreeing to change their personnel practices. In 1986, the EEOC high-profile sex discrimination case against Sears went to trial. Sears would ultimately win the case, but the case became a touchstone for a bigger problem in the United States. U.S. law often failed to capture overlapping discrimination, especially when black women face the intersection of race and gender. So, why does any of this matter? The Sears catalog matters because it changed the terms of everyday power. In Jim Crow stores, black customers paid a color tax. They were steered toward worse goods, denied returns, humiliated at the counter. The catalog flattened out that hierarchy. It published prices in print. It promised refunds in writing. It let people choose the quality for themselves. It replaced the local gatekeeper with a contract, order form, money order, and a receipt. A paper trail was more than a shopping record. It was leverage. These habits, comparing prices, demanding guarantees, sending back what wasn't right, taught a language of rights long before sit-ins. And this ripple effect was very real. Local shopkeepers had to compete or fear losing business. Money orders let black families outfit their homes, schools, and churches with the same ovens, stoves, pianos, books, and tools that white folks were using. Sears didn't set out to topple Jim Crow. It followed the money in a way that weakened the local system of control. It showed how black people could use standardized systems to punctuate local customs. And this is why this isn't just a quaint story about a simple catalog. It is an economic blueprint for how simple changes can completely reroute the source of economic power. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this has been One Mic Black History. If you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at OneMicHistory.com. Additionally, I also have a Substack where I publish notes every single day and publish stories every single week. I would like to thank all my day ones and my contributors. Without you, none of this could be possible. I love you all. Peace.